Our author closes out his text with a look to the future, but also to and both in a positive and perhaps an apprehensive kind of frame of mind when as he looks at the social problems that are ahead. But it's important for us to be able to anticipate the kinds of developments that we can expect in our society. And just to take a little bit of time, I think this would be a relatively short lecture, just to look at some of these social problems and to consider how this may impact us in our work and how it might affect our profession in general. Putnam believes that we have become so focused on ourselves in the absence of creating connections to the community that we're producing a country without a sense of social connectedness. The interesting thing is, as the capacities of connectedness increase through social media, the nature of those connections perhaps, well, I don't think there's a perhaps to this, becomes much more superficial in many respects, so that, well, I can remember when email first became prominent, and in fact, one of my older brothers kept saying to me, because he was one of these Luddites he was the last one in the family to get into the whole email thing. My brothers and I have a habit every weekend of emailing each other so that we stay in touch with what's going on in each other's lives, and it's been a very wonderful way for us to stay in touch. But this one brother kept saying, "Why don't we pick up the telephone? Can you imagine? You can actually hear somebody's voice on a telephone." And resisted. But emails then, 10, 12 years ago, kind of devolved into chat rooms, and not necessarily even chat rooms, but things like MSN and message windows and things where people stopped sending emails and started chatting with each other live in these windows. And then it became MySpace, and then Facebook, where you could make longer or shorter posts and just stay in touch with certain friends. And some people were pretty indiscriminate about the number of friends they have, but thousands and thousands of friends. Others are more exclusive. But that's evolved into tweets, where you're limited to 140 characters, not words, but characters in messages, and tweets been the big thing lately. And where it will go next, I don't know. And some of you are probably saying he's not even mentioning such and such, because really, social media is just changing the way we communicate with each other. But how is it impacting our connectedness? This is a part of what I think is the social revolution that's been brought about by the invention of the computer and the microchip, and so who knows how in 100 years from now social relationships are going to look like. But I think it's safe to say, in this day and age, the personal connection that we have had with each other is probably declining. In the face of the rise of social media, we may be becoming, on one hand, maybe we're saying things to people we don't even know, like for instance in chat rooms, where you individuals go into chat rooms and can be as anonymous and create fake identities and say things that are true about themselves to people they've never met, never will met, that they would not say to people that they live with on a day-to-day basis. How does that change intimacy? How does that change our ability to be honest and open with each other? So there's many different things like that may change the face of our nation and your clients in the next few generations. And here are some examples of the loss of social connected with declining in union memberships and PTA memberships, Boy Scout enrollment, Red Cross membership, those kinds of things. And so these kinds of things are bound to have an impact on our daily existence, and Putnam believes that it affects things like school performance and our physical and mental health, leads to an increase in crime rate, a number of different kinds of things like that. And so social isolation is one of those concerns that we probably need to look ahead to and to be aware of, that could become something that we will be dealing with as a profession. Another concern is the loss of civil liberties, and after September 11th, A significant amount of civil liberties were retracted by the Bush administration through the Patriot Act and other kinds of things that have happened since. We're incarcerating people in Cuba that haven't even been tried and charged, for that matter, and they're still there in Guantanamo. I remember Barack Obama saying during the 2008 campaign that he was going to eliminate Guantanamo, and he has never been able to do that for whatever reason. And so that is certainly a difference, but also in our own lives, as we've come to learn, we lack the kind of privacy that we believe we have, and the individuals who are invading our privacy are going to ask you, do you want to be protected from terrorists and the possibility of terrorism or not? And if so, you're going to surrender some of your privacy in exchange for more security. And that's something that is sort of the debate in the current atmosphere. And so we should not take our civil liberties for granted ever. And one of the things that we need to do is to make sure that we stay active in this particular discussion. And one way to do that is to be active in government, be alert and aware of the issues, and I hear many times from students, both verbally as well as in discussion boards and things, that I really don't pay much attention to the news, or I'm not really attuned to these topics or whatever. Sometimes students tell me that through their journals and blog posts and discussion boards posts that they really become aware of issues that they never knew really existed before. And I'm happy for that, and that's part of the reason for that. Being in the course is to get you aware of the world and how these kinds of things are affecting you and affecting our profession and our clients. And so stay involved, read the paper, listen to the news, talk to your representative or your congressman, vote, even if it doesn't seem like your vote matters sometimes. The fact that you're out there participating matters, and your elected representatives will see that. And so don't sit back and just let civil liberties be taken from you without being aware that it's going on. Because if you're not paying attention to things, bad things will happen in our lives. Another issue, a declining middle class and an increasing lower class, lower socioeconomic group. There's a lot of data out there about how, first of all, that there's an increase in the absolute number of lower income people. And we know the many negative effects of poverty. And if you have any doubts about any of that, and you haven't done this yet, please do sign up for Social Work Human Services 106. I teach the course online. Other individuals in the social work department also teach the course. It is an introduction to social welfare, and is really important for you to know about. We very easily can ignore poor people, and we reach all sorts of conclusions about them and why they're there, and we kid ourselves into believing that everybody can pull themselves up by their bootstraps, and nothing could be further from the truth. And I'm not going to go into a deep lecture on that. We talked about that during our section on poverty. But in any event, well-paying jobs are becoming scarcer also, even for in higher level jobs or whatever, because of outsourcing and things like this. And so this particular author believes that the middle class may also start to dwindle pretty soon, and what you're going to wind up seeing is an increase in poverty, an increase in extreme wealth, and not much in between if current trends continue. And again, this is where, and he also says education isn't going to have such a great influence on things, because the more highly educated people in a society will find that they're being put in jobs that they're overqualified for. This is something not to discourage you, but to be aware of the trend, and to make sure that you stay involved in not allowing this to happen. Younger workers are going to find that there are less jobs available than were there a few years ago. Older workers are the ones that are going to be affected first. There's going to be less money spent on public education and medical care, and the social safety net, which is constantly under threats from those individuals in the political arena, and thus the people that the people at risk, that is, those people that the social safety net keeps safe, those people are going to be threatened. It is an interesting kind of fact when you watch politics and you listen to the debate over current issues and things like this, when people talk about the budget deficit and those kinds of things, where the conservatives always go is they start cutting things like food stamps, and they cut public radio. They want to cut food stamps. They want to cut welfare benefits. They're going to cut back on Head Start and all those kinds of programs that are very vital. Maybe public radio isn't vital, but I think it is. But many people not vital like food stamps and Head Start and public assistance. But those are the places that the budget cutters go to, and they get a lot of accolades for that because there's this mean-spirited kind of thing going on in the nation about people who are dependent, and so they get easy votes. It's cheap politics, and to balance the budget on the backs of the poor. And it really makes very, very little difference in how things happen. That's not where the budget cuts need to happen. But that's what's going on. Again, sit to the side and allow it to happen, or get in there and talk to your representatives and your senators and insist that it stops. Here's different reasons for the middle class decreasing in size according to another study, that upper middle income brackets are decreasing because a lot of the highly skilled professional jobs are being outsourced where the salaries are lower. Outsourcing is a big deal. These days corporations are going to other countries. Look at the computer industry, for instance, and people complain about the fact that they can't understand the techs on the phone. The reason that the techs are speaking or have a foreign accent is because wealthy computer corporations and the wealthy software companies are saving a lot of money by paying people in India to do your tech support rather than to pay people in America who have a different kind of income structure and expect higher pay. Outsourcing is one thing that's threatening the middle class, and increasingly also in the manufacturing sector where a lot of our jobs are dependent on that. Once again, parts are being made outside the country, and so that's another thing. Again, outsourcing not only of jobs but also of manufacturing. And then finally, the fact that people in the lower income, the reaches of lower income and lower middle class and the middle class for that matter, have to borrow money a lot, and this pushes the cost of loans up and makes a lot of different ways, just impacts the economy negatively. Things like mortgages and personal bankruptcies, things like that have been at an all-time high in the last several years. And there's concerns that the borrowing power of the lower and middle class homes and even high income people is going to dissipate. John Edwards ran for president, I believe, in 2004, was then, when he didn't get the nomination, ran as John Kerry's vice presidential candidate in their failed campaign. And then again in 2008 ran again in the year that Barack Obama was nominated. Due to some personal indiscretions, John Edwards is probably not likely to be a serious candidate for the presidency again, probably ever. But the big theme in his campaigns, particularly in 2004, was about the two Americas. And this really struck a chord, and it really kind of illustrated, I think, finally taught us all what it is that we were seeing happening, that there are two Americas. There's an America of privileged upper class, of people who don't carry their own keys and who don't have to worry about bills, can build elevators for their automobiles in their homes and send their kids to the best universities, and in fact can insist upon their kids being admitted to the best universities no matter their grades. And then the other that is the burdened class that has to struggle to make ends meet, sometimes can't make the mortgage payment, at best is going to co-sign on loans for their kids to go deep in debt in order to get a college education and improve themselves in the next generation. There's the working America. There's the other America that reaps the rewards of those workers. That's sort of the Marxist look at the economy, the capitalist economy, the workers and the owners. But really, when you observe the way that the society functions, that's what it is. The struggle over minimum wage. It's a good example of that. And yes, increasing the minimum wage is going to hurt small businesses. There's no question about that. And it's probably going to push prices up so that in effect it'll hurt the rest of us because we're going to be paying more for things perhaps. But by the same token, having more money in the economy is something that's going to be good for the economy. It'll be good for industry and probably good for small businesses in the long run as well. It sure beats people making less than half of what they need to make ends meet, to be able to live on a day-to-day basis, which is what's going on right now with the current minimum wage. While the fabulously wealthy, the people that run these businesses, increase their profits more and more and more by keeping wages down and prices up. That's two Americas. One America that pays taxes and then another that gets the tax breaks. And certainly over the last decade or so, the Obama administration has made some efforts to try to change this some. And there's been quite an outcry about this, about increasing the taxes on the wealthy. But the fact of the matter is the people that make the most money are paying the least amount of tax proportionally in this nation. Least amount of tax you are paying more percentage-wise than the wealthiest people in this country. So the idea of two Americas kind of grows from that, and I think is very real. And while there are those here, as you see, that reject this notion that it's an argument of liberal politicians, that the fact is, in fact, they talk about class warfare, that the liberals are always trying to stir up class warfare, sort of, again, that's that threat of Marxism, that threat of communism, that little unspoken kind of fear there that the conservatives put in place, that that liberals are dangerous because they want poor people to be able to not be poor anymore. How absurd, but there it is. Medical emergencies is probably the biggest reason that the financial security has decreased for the middle class, and this is an area where the Affordable Care Act at least begins to address some of this, but probably not entirely. But I think we saw statistics earlier in the semester about the percentage of middle class individuals and how the bankruptcies, most of the bankruptcies that have occurred in the United States were because of, I want to say something like 2/3 of the bankruptcies was because of a medical crisis that was more than their insurance would cover and more than they can afford, and it broke them. And that's where most of the bankruptcies came from. And the majority of those who were going broke because of medical emergencies were fully insured. The medical care system, the insurance industry in this nation needs to be fixed. And the Affordable Care Act leaves a lot to be desired, but it is a step in that direction. We need to see it continue and go further. And again, this is going to be your job in this profession, among others, to try to encourage this to occur so that everybody can get access to affordable health care. And this is one thing that will probably help the middle class then as well. The housing prices also tie into all this kinds of things as well. But the fact is that most of us could not get along. Well, this is the old notion that we live paycheck to paycheck. And when you pass homeless people, beggars on the street, and you think about the difference between yourself and those individuals, sometimes I remind myself that a month or two from now, if I lost my job and I had no income, that could be me. This heading should say serious issues unattended to practice issues. Serious unattended to practice issues. Serious unattended practice issues, I think is what it's supposed to say. I put this together, but so anyway, Glicken thinks that social work and social welfare institutions have avoided dealing with some very serious problems in America. I'm talking about some of them that we need to deal with, and he's been talking about coming up ahead of us, but there's also ones that we've been ignoring that are currently right in front of us, and one of them is men's issues. And I don't mean to. He doesn't say anything about women's issues, and there's a lot of things about women that we're not tending to either. But the social work profession has picked up the banner of I don't want to say feminism, but of women's rights, let's say, and of gender rights, let's say gender equality. That's one of those issues that the social work profession, if you get there. The NASW news. If you don't, you should join NASW. And as a student, you get a good deal on that too, a reduced rate, and you have access to their journal, and as well as get the newsletter and can be up to date on what's going on in the field. And the NASW has long been involved in women's rights and same-sex marriage and the gay lesbian rights and AIDS intervention, things like that. But one area that social workers are really ignoring are men's issues, and despite the fact that men outrank women in all these leading causes of deaths, that their death rates is twice as high as women's for other kinds of areas like suicide and homicide and those kinds of things. And so men's issues is one area. I teach a men and masculinity class. I try to counter that, but don't get to teach it often enough. Here's another interesting figure for you to think about, and without going into the rationale behind this, but 900,000 black males are in prison. 600,000 black males attend college, junior college, or vocational training programs. Potent powerful information, something to think about. Our older population is growing every year, and many have social and emotional problems that are very treatable, and yet we've learned in the earlier chapters that many older adults are denied help because many professionals believe that they just can't benefit from treatment. That's simply not true. Let's not throw away our elderly. The Department of Labor says that employment in our field is going to grow faster than the average for all other occupations, or the average for all occupations, I should say, over the next, decade anyway, and about 500,000 new jobs. And average salary for social workers at $42,000. That's not a great salary. It's a living, and that's an average salary, so you can expect to be making more than that as the years go along. Depends on, a lot depends upon who you go to work for. If you're working for a government agency, you're probably going to have a better salary than if you're working for private nonprofits. And you have to think about the fact that the private nonprofits, it isn't to say that you can't earn money with private nonprofits, but the fact that they are a nonprofit would imply that to have people in that making large salaries in private nonprofits would somehow be opposed to what private nonprofits are all about, right? Government jobs give you a little more job security. They certainly offer you higher pay than many other places, but you have to have a certain kind of tolerance for the bureaucracy in order to work in a government position. And there are people who work for the government who believe that it's difficult to do social work when you work for the government. As somebody who spent the largest part of his career working for state or county government, I would tell you that nothing can be further from the truth. If you want to do social work, you can do social work in government employment. That's an excuse for people who say you can't do government work when you work for the state. Simply not true. And it's no less true, or it's no more true, let's say, that if you work for a private nonprofit, say for instance Catholic Social Services, there are certain things you can't do working for Catholic Social Services. Like for instance, you can't counsel your clients to get abortions. You can't facilitate a single parent adoption. You cannot facilitate a gay or lesbian adoption. And the reason for that is because that opposes the belief systems of the organization, the religion that funds that. Okay, so even in private nonprofits, there's still things you cannot do as a social worker. So there are things you cannot do as a social worker and you work for the government as well. That doesn't mean you can't do social work. So don't let people convince you can't. But in any event, salary is something that, I think you'll find is going to be something you can make a living at. We don't get paid what we're worth, but in most jobs, but depending upon where you work and how long you stay put and those kinds of things, you should be able to make ends meet in the profession. One person here, Krauth, believes that psychotherapy and counseling is going to be used less and less often, and that education is probably going to dominate the counseling field, focus on prevention. I'll believe the focus on prevention when I see it, because they've been talking about prevention services ever since I was, a gleam in the eye of my first social work professor. I mean, we still don't fund prevention, and I don't know that I buy that prevention is going to be the focus in the future. I just don't. I do believe that counseling and psychotherapy is going to continue to be an area of practice. If you're interested in that, by all means, continue pursuing that. But don't limit yourself to that, because social work is a much more varied and interesting field of practice than simply therapy and counseling. The internet is probably going to become more prominent in our field, both in terms of research and education. Here I sit. 40 years ago, we'd have never thought about this. And 10 years ago, I'd have probably told you that taking an online course, that you're probably not going to get the kind of experience you're going to get out of a classroom. I don't believe that anymore. I wouldn't be sitting here teaching online courses. I in many respects, I think, in fact, I have seen students gain more from online classes than I've been able to give them in a classroom setting. So, but certainly in the field of practice as well, the internet's going to become more prominent in addition to that. The economy is going to say quicker therapy. Brief interventions, are sort of have been the vogue for the last 20 years, and I think will continue to be, particularly if insurance companies continue to pay for a lot of the services that social workers provide. They're going to want to keep costs down. That's what social insurance companies do. If we eventually do go to a single payer insurance system, I'm sure the government's going to limit the amount of time you can get paid for doing a certain thing as well. Economic realities are going to say, get in there, get the work done, get out of there, make sure you have the credentials to do what you're supposed to do, don't charge too much. We're going to be rewarded for utilizing best practice provided through research evidence, and there will be more research as new approaches evolve and are studied and things like this. And in the end, the thought is that homework and internet's going to be a lot to do with what we do. Again, self-help groups, you see here, we were talking about self-help groups a couple of times during the semester, and the value of self-help groups, the effectiveness of it, and the fact that more people want to use self-help than professional services. And so maybe find a way to get involved in the self-help movement as well. More research, more focus is going to go into research in psychotherapy, and that should help us to become better therapists for those of us that are therapists, and to be more helpful to our clients, so that we'll have a stronger research basis for making judgments and decisions in how to best use resources. Remember, in the earliest chapters that we read, Glicken chided the profession about our tendency to believe in myths and certain kinds of anecdotal evidence of this and that without having really good solid research backing up some of the basic beliefs about practice in social work. He believes that the future holds promise for more research. And for those of you that are interested in research, social work and social services is a great field for research, and encourage you to explore that area if that's what you'd like to do with your career. And so that ties together this particular chapter and also closes out our work for the semester. I just want to tell you that I've appreciated the opportunity to share this information with you. I hope that you've become more interested in the field, not less, as a result of this course, and I do hope to see you again in future classes. In the meantime, take care of yourselves and keep studying. Work for that BSW. Thank you.